a 55-year-old widowed woman living alone. One day, she wakes up with a strange pain in her stomach. She hasn't been with a man, hasn't even left her house in years. But now, she's pregnant. The town shuns her, thinks she's lost her mind, until someone from her past knocks on her door in the middle of the night. But what if this man isn't just someone from the past? And what if what she's carrying is more than just a baby? You'll want to follow this story all the way to the end. We're just a few steps away from reaching our first 1,500 subscribers, our growing family. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you to everyone who's brought us this far. With your support, we grow stronger with every story. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. When Margaret Stein opened her eyes in the darkness of the night, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach, accompanied by the howling wind outside and the heart-wrenching creaks of the old wooden roof. It was as if something inside was poking, pressing, and pulling at her with claws. She was drenched in sweat. As her chest rose and fell, the blanket she had pulled up slipped off. There was no light except the dull redness leaking from the long-dead embers of the stove, in a night the color of a bruise. She felt like a stranger even to her own silence. She was alone with signals number 55-year-old woman's body should be sending. The taste of fear was like sucking on a rusty nail, bitter, metallic, and nauseating. Becoming a stranger to her own body, becoming a woman again after all these years, but this time, without any control. There were no words for it. Margaret had been alone for over 10 years. Since her husband Thomas had been buried in a stone grave at the edge of the forest, she hadn't heard a man's breath in her bed, nor felt a sense of closeness that belonged to this world. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw the past, a lifetime hiding behind the wrinkles. But now even the reflection in the mirror looked like someone else. When morning came after the night, seeping into the room with a gray paleness, Margaret sat up. When she went to the water basin, she noticed her hands were trembling. Even her fingers were betraying her. Not even the splash of cold water on her face could put out the burning fear inside her. She looked in the mirror. She looked at herself for a long time. When she got dressed and went outside, she put on her old, worn cap and felt the buttons of her gray vest with her hands. Every step carried exhaustion, every movement helplessness, but she couldn't show that to anyone. Today, she had to go to town. Her growing belly had become too visible to hide. The town, the people there, always watching, always whispering. Margaret knew them. How they talked, how they stayed silent, how their stone-cold stares could pierce right through you. When she got to the store, it was quiet around her, but that silence meant a lot in this town. A few kids clung to their mother's skirts. An old man glanced her way and quickly looked away. The shopkeeper, Mr. Keller, one of Thomas's old friends, tensed up when he saw Margaret. "Morning, Margaret," he said, his voice neither warm nor openly hostile. "Mr. Keller," Margaret replied, her voice flat and tired. She grabbed some flour, salt, and soap from the shelves. She tried to act like she didn't need anything, but with every step, the weight of the town pressed harder on her. The town lived on little secrets, but breathed through big gossip. Women looked at her and curled their lips. One of them whispered. They saw her walking by the lake at night, holding her belly, eyes staring blankly. Another one added, "She's not the age for it. But sin doesn't care how old you are, does it?" As Margaret walked out of the store, it was like she could hear each of her steps. A silent court had gathered. The townsfolk had already passed their judgment. As she slowly guided her horse, her eyes caught the small chapel by the roadside. Pastor Henry stood in the doorway, staring straight at her. He said nothing, but his gaze was as heavy as a verse from Scripture. When she got home, Margaret started fixing the fences with her hands, splitting wood. Physical exhaustion was the only way to drown out the screaming in her mind. The weight in her belly grew heavier by the day, and the sense of alienation in her own body was turning into a nightmare. That night, the air was as heavy and suffocating as the silence inside. Just as Margaret was about to fall asleep, there was a knock at the door. A single, deep knock. The second one was louder. Her hand reached for the rifle on instinct. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice hoarse and cracked. There was silence. Then a voice from behind the door. "Margaret Stein, do you remember me?" She recognized the voice. But that was impossible. That man had disappeared years ago. The door creaked open. The moonlight outlined his silhouette. Tall, his face in shadow. "Michael Grant," Margaret whispered. The man took off his hat. He had returned to the land he once left, to Margaret's loneliness, and now, with a secret. You're in trouble, Margaret. You need help. More than you think. Margaret's hands were locked around the barrel of the rifle. Her heart wasn't just beating, it was pounding in her chest. And in that moment, for the first time in years, she realized that fear and hope could breathe in the same breath. The last time Margaret had seen Michael Grant, he was walking down the road that led to the marshlands, an old bag on his back, a goodbye on his face that left no trace. That day, no one asked why he was leaving, and he told no one anything. He left behind only lies, and what remained of a stranger who had once earned Margaret's trust. And now, years later, he had shown up like a ghost. Help? You left me years ago. That wasn't enough. Now what are you here with? Margaret's voice was like steel, but her eyes, there was a tremble in them. Michael stepped inside. Margaret still hadn't lowered her rifle. When he got to the stove, his face finally came into view under the flickering light of the lamp. He looked older. The scar on his chin seemed deeper, but his eyes were the same gray darkness. You think I betrayed you, Michael said. His voice was tired but steady. But things were darker than they looked, Margaret. I wasn't just trying to save myself that day. I was trying to save you too. But now time's up. Margaret narrowed her eyes. Time's up? What the hell are you talking about? Michael pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. When he laid it on the table, Margaret could only make out a few words. It was a complicated document. Scientific terms, numbers, names. And Margaret's name right in the middle. What is this? She asked, though a voice inside her already knew the answer. Your file. You mean the file on the woman who was supposedly part of a scientific experiment? Michael lowered his head. Yes. And worse, the file isn't finished. Which means they're still looking for you. Without a second's thought, Margaret pointed the rifle at Michael's chest. Who the hell do you think you are? Why are you in my life again? Michael didn't back away. Because the ones who find you don't leave traces. But I followed the trail. For years, I tracked what happened to the other women. Margaret, you're the first one who survived. But they're not going to stop. Because whatever's inside you, it's still valuable to them. At that moment, Margaret's face froze. What's inside me? Michael looked away. It's not a child, at least not just a child. They call it a biological activation project. They want to observe the results of a process they started with your body. There were other women like you, but none of them got this far. Some of them vanished right at the start. Margaret's mind was spinning. She sat down in a chair, hands going to her head. For the first time, she clearly felt that the weight growing inside her wasn't just physical. So why now? She whispered. Michael stepped closer. Because I know they've started watching you. This morning, an old man was talking to someone behind Keller's store. I recognized the symbol on his jacket. It's them, Margaret. They're following you. Watching. And they're going to take you soon. Just then, a noise came from outside. A piece of tin hanging from the roof clanged in the wind, but it wasn't just that. Rustling, footsteps. Margaret jumped to her feet and aimed the rifle at the window. Michael quickly turned off the light. They both stayed still in the dark, holding their breath. A shadow passed in front of the window. Then a click. The door handle slowly turned down. Michael reached out his hand to Margaret. We need to go out the back. Now. Margaret's face was covered in sweat, but her eyes had hardened. When I was a kid, my father taught me what to do if I was ever home alone. He also taught me never to drop my gun. Michael smirked. Good. Because we're going to need both of us to get out of this. They slipped out the door. The back of Margaret's cabin was surrounded by thick woods. They started to run. Moonlight streamed down in narrow lines through the branches, making it even harder to see in the dark. Then came a sudden blast from the cabin behind them. The door had been forced open. A man's voice echoed out. Come now, or we'll drag her out. Margaret looked back, panting. Who are they? Michael didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed her arm and pulled her into the depths of the forest. As they ran, Margaret felt the pain in her stomach come back. A pain that dropped like a stone. But she couldn't stop now. Michael looked back. We've only got a few minutes. If they catch us, we'll never see daylight again. This isn't just your story anymore, Margaret. This is the moment the hunt begins. By the time they plunged into the forest, Margaret's lungs felt like they were on fire. Every step came with a jolt of pain. Whatever was growing inside her shifted with each movement, pushing the pain deep into her bones. But she couldn't stop. The footsteps behind them, the rustling branches, and the men's muffled voices carried on the wind whispered just how close their pursuers were. Michael moved ahead, pausing every few steps to listen, then changing direction. It was clear he knew the forest like a map. As surprised as Margaret was by how prepared he seemed, a gnawing doubt also grew inside her. Why had this man really come back? After about half an hour, they reached a stream. The water glinted like steel under the moonlight. Michael stepped into the current, which reached his knees, and turned to Margaret. "I'm going to pull you upstream. It'll be harder for them to track our scent, and the mud will erase our footprints." Margaret could only nod, worn out. The water was ice cold. It cut through to her bones, but it burned less than those chasing her. They walked along the stream for a while. Then Michael turned right and pushed through thick shrubs. After a short climb, they reached a small rock ledge. It was a hidden natural hollow. From the outside, no one would even know it was there. Michael leaned in and checked the space, then motioned to Margaret with his hand. She crawled inside, and he followed right after. Their breaths were silent, their eyes sharp. Minutes passed. Then came the first sound. Footsteps. There were 3 of them. Every leaf they stepped on pressed down on Margaret's heart. "The trail goes up to the water," said one. "Nothing after that. They probably went upstream." "No, that woman can't handle that," said another. "Maybe they're here. Maybe Dash." The third voice was different. Cold, sharp, and familiar. "They're not as simple as you think," the voice said. "This woman, she's special. What she carries in her body is the key to our success. I want her alive. But the man, kill him if you must." Michael turned to Margaret, narrowing his eyes. He mouthed a single word. "Lucas." Margaret's eyes widened. She remembered that name. Thomas's old business partner. But he had left town in a rush years ago. Later, his name had been tied to murder. Once the footsteps faded away, Michael finally exhaled, though his face stayed hard as stone. "If Lucas is here, it means this thing is bigger than we thought," he said. "Where he works, it's not labs they fund, it's slaughterhouses." Margaret lowered her head. "What have I been pulled into?" Michael was silent, then whispered a single sentence. "You're the only successful result of the experiment." Margaret grabbed him by the collar. "What does that mean? Tell me straight." Michael met her eyes without backing down. "Years ago, a group of scientists ran a secret project to genetically reawaken the wombs of aging women. They wanted to bypass infertility, menopause, age, all of it. For money, for fame, maybe just to play God. They couldn't find volunteers, so they targeted quiet, lonely women cut off from the world. Women like you. I didn't volunteer." Margaret roared. "I know," Michael said. "They gave it to you like a vaccine. Maybe told you it was just a shot. Maybe a doctor, some health group, a research team." Margaret's eyes darkened. A memory flashed from deep in her mind, something long forgotten. When Thomas was sick, a group had come. They said it was a health checkup. They took blood from him. From her too. Was it then? Michael nodded. "Most likely. They picked you before Thomas died." Margaret backed away, holding her head. Then, the pain inside her struck again. Stronger. Sharper. This wasn't just pain anymore. It was movement. Michael's eyes widened. "You feel it, don't you? It's waking up now. They're out of time. That's why they want you back." Margaret collapsed to the ground, trying to catch her breath. But then, a shout echoed at the entrance to the cave. "Found them," someone yelled. Michael sprang up, turned to Margaret. "We've got to run." But it was too late. A figure appeared at the entrance, black uniform, a helmet covering the face. Then another, armed. Michael dove to shield Margaret. A gunshot rang out in the cave. The bullet hit the rock above them, sending shards flying. Michael pulled out his weapon and fired back. One of the men dropped, hit. The other screamed and retreated. Margaret lay on the ground, ears ringing with a high-pitched buzz. But Michael grabbed her by the arm and yanked her up. "This is just the beginning, Margaret," he said through clenched teeth. "They'd send an army to get you." And then, from a distance, came the sound of a helicopter. Rotors slicing through the sky. The watching was over. The hunt had begun. The sound of helicopter blades slicing through the sky grew closer with every second. In the darkness of the night, that metallic buzz in the air had turned into a gut-twisting alarm. Margaret flinched at the taste of blood in her mouth as Michael gripped her arm tightly and dragged her toward the narrow passage at the back of the cave. "Get up. Now," Michael shouted. "I can't, the thing inside me." Margaret's sentence broke off. That strange movement in the lower left of her belly. It wasn't rhythmic like a baby, nor chaotic like a muscle spasm. It was an organism, acting as if it had awareness. They're going to want to take it out, Michael said as he rushed through the passage. But not alive. Whatever's inside you, it's their proof. You're the only case where the experiment worked, and they want to show it off. Not in labs, not in courtrooms, in dark markets. The passage opened into a rocky, narrow path. The trees thinned, and a wide valley stretched out below. At the far end of the valley, lights. A house. A cabin. Maybe shelter, maybe a trap. Michael stopped. Margaret dropped to her knees, gasping. "What is that?" she whispered. Michael squinted. "I don't know, but it might be help. Because we've got nothing else." They began descending the slope together. The soil was slick, the branches like splinters, and every breath felt like not enough. But the helicopter was now flying higher. It seemed like the search had stopped. Or they were planning to guide them in. As they neared the shelter, the figure standing by the door became clearer. A tall, thin woman. She held a lantern. Michael froze. "No, that's not possible. You know her?" Michael slowly nodded. "Yes, but she was dead." The woman stepped closer. Her face became visible in the flickering lantern light. Margaret's eyes widened. The woman's face looked just like hers. Her eyes, her cheekbones, it was as if. The woman spoke. Her voice was icy. "Hello, Margaret. I guess you don't remember we're twins." Margaret backed away. No, this is a joke. My sister died before she was born. That's what my mother told me." The woman smiled. "No, that's the lie they told you. They took me away the moment I was born. Your mother wasn't even allowed to believe she had me. Just like you, she was a test subject." Michael took a few steps back. "That's impossible. Cloning at this level. Did they really pull it off?" The woman stepped closer to Margaret. "I'm your first version. Or the failed one. But I watched you. You survived. And whatever's inside you, it's not ours." "Who are they?" Margaret asked, her voice rough. The woman stared. "They're the ones who made us. Designed us. And now, it's harvest time." Michael raised his rifle. "Take one more step, and I'll shoot you." The woman smiled. "You can't kill me. Because you're one of them too, Michael." At that moment, Margaret's world collapsed again. She turned to Michael. "Is that true?" Michael lowered his head. His eyes were filled with tears, but his voice held a strange clarity. "I wasn't one of them. But I worked for them. I was sent to find you, but then I chose. I chose to protect you." The woman took another step forward. "It's too late. How many people have died because of you, Michael? In that cave, in that town, in those labs. You don't get to play the hero when your hands are soaked in blood." Margaret took a step back, her hands over her stomach. "Enough," she shouted. "I'm tired of all of you wanting something from me. Whatever this thing is growing inside me, I'll decide what happens to it. Where I go, what I believe." The woman lowered her head. "Then make your choice. Come with us, or we'll come for you." A silence fell. The hum of the night sliced through the valley like a blade. Margaret reached for her weapon, and in that instant, a sound rose from behind the shelter. An engine, a truck. A group of men came out, armed. Helmets, night vision goggles. The woman looked up. "I guess the decision's been made for you." Michael immediately pulled Margaret down. Gunfire ripped through the air. The shelter's windows shattered, walls splintered. Michael grabbed Margaret's arm and dragged her out the back door. The woman screamed, "Take her." But it was too late. Margaret was running. Whatever was inside her was moving too, adding a new weight with every step. But this time, she wasn't running to escape. She was running to fight. Because now there was only one truth. This body was hers. And so was the choice. Margaret stood in the middle of the dark tunnel. The silence surrounding her was not peace. It was the calm before the storm. She closed her eyes. The presence inside her was no longer just something she could feel. It had become a consciousness, an intelligence, a companion. In front of her, standing at the threshold of a metal door, the woman, her twin, stared, measuring Margaret's resistance. Behind her, armed men waited for orders. And Michael stood silently to the side, saying nothing, watching Margaret. But Margaret noticed something had changed in his eyes. Coldness, withdrawal, doubt. Michael slowly moved his hand behind his back. There was a hidden transmitter there. Margaret noticed. And in that moment, the voice inside her spoke again. Betrayal, danger, decision. Margaret's mind cleared. The greater danger wasn't outside. It was betrayal from within. "Michael," she said softly. He flinched. Margaret, what are you dash? When did you decide? She asked, voice calm but devastating. To sell me out. Michael looked away. The woman stepped forward. He was always with us, Margaret, she said. Getting close to you, protecting you, bringing you here. It was all part of the plan. But he developed emotional weaknesses. This is his last chance to make it right. Margaret lowered her head. So I was fooled all along. Michael stepped forward. No. At first, yes. But then it changed. I wanted to protect you. But they threatened my family. I had to make a choice. And now, Margaret fell silent. The pain inside her had spread through her whole body. Her vision blurred. She dropped to her knees. The woman shouted, now take her. But at that moment, Margaret let out a scream, not of pain, not of fear, but like a warning. And then, the ceiling cracked. The metal supports above the underground chamber shook all at once. The air pressure changed. An invisible force pulsed from Margaret's body, slamming against the walls and waves. The men were thrown to the ground. Glass shattered. Electrical panels sparked. The woman stumbled back. Stop her. Stop it. But it was too late. Margaret's eyes were open, but her irises had gone completely white. The thing inside her had awakened. Michael ran to her in a burst of regret. I can help you. Just let me. But Margaret turned to him. There was no hatred in her eyes, no forgiveness either. Only truth. I'm not one of you. Not anymore. Michael moved to take another step, but the tunnel ceiling collapsed. A wall of concrete fell between them. Only Margaret remained, and the new life inside her. The woman, the twin, screamed orders at the soldiers. But the energy inside was now fused with Margaret's will. It was beyond control. You are what we made you, the woman shouted. Margaret stood up. Her body trembled, but she refused to fall. No, you tested me, but I made myself. And what's inside me, it's not yours. It's not of this world. It's mine. And in that moment, Margaret made her choice. She held her stomach. This birth will happen, but not in front of your eyes. She scanned for the facility's power system, found the generator, reached for a cable. The being inside her moved with her. The explosion, silent but devastating, burst out like a wave of light. The facility began collapsing from within. The woman tried to run. The soldiers froze, leaderless. Michael, on the other side of the rubble, fell to his knees and bowed his head. And Margaret, her eyes glowed one last time. The darkness vanished. A few months later, in another part of the forest, a small cabin. Inside, a woman stares out the window. In her arms, a cradle. Inside it sleeps a baby, but with different eyes. Calm, wise, awake. There's no name on the door. But Margaret is gone. She's taken a new name, a new life. But in her eyes, there is still something. A future that belongs to no one. The Yindi, by the way, we noticed something small. Most people who watch these stories aren't actually subscribed to the channel. Maybe we get caught up in the moment, or just forget to hit the button. But your support truly helps us keep creating stories like this. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel.